Welcome back, AP Comparative Government students. In today's lesson, we're examining important elements of executive systems, such as executive term limits. What are they, why they matter, and how they vary across regimes. We're going to cover the purpose of term limits, arguments for and against them, case studies from democracies and authoritarian regimes. So let's get into it. Executive term limits restrict the number of terms or years a person can serve as the country's chief executive, usually a president or a prime minister. There are two common types. Term limits, which is a fixed years per term, example 4 or 5 years. Also term limits, a cap on how many times someone can serve, example 2 terms. The purpose of term limits is to prevent the abuse of power, promote democratic transitions, limit concentration of authority in one person. Pros of term limits, well, they prevent authoritarian drift, encourage leadership turnover, which generally means new ideas, promote accountability and innovation, reduce corruption over time. The cons of term limits, well, if you have an effective leader, you may be removing them too early, undermining continuity in policy, encouraging lame duck behavior due to loss of influence near the end of a term. The design of term limits reflects a country's political culture and regime type. In democracy, term limits are usually constitutional and respected. A good example of this is Mexico. They have a president who serves one 6-year term called a sexenio. There is no re-election. The president concentrates on being president for 6 years and then they are done. In Nigeria, the president serves 2 4-year terms, similar to what we see in the United States. In authoritarian regimes, leaders often remove or ignore term limits to extend power. For example, in Russia, Vladimir Putin has gotten the legislature to revise or reset the constitutional limits. In China, Xi Jinping removed term limits in 2018. Effectively, both of these leaders are now serving for life. Term limits can exist on paper, but be ignored in practice in authoritarian regimes. When leaders eliminate term limits, power becomes concentrated. Democratic backsliding can occur. Institutions can weaken, and elections can become less competitive or symbolic. President Putin served 2 terms, stepped down, and then returned as president. The Constitution was amended to allow him to potentially stay until 2036. This reflects a shift from competitive democracy to a personalist authoritarianism. Key takeaways from this video: you should know term limits are a key tool to prevent the concentration of power. Democracies use them to protect transition of power. Authoritarian regimes often try to extend or even abolish term limits. The presence and enforcement of term limits is a strong indicator of regime type, and understanding executive term limits helps explain how leaders gain, retain, and extend power, and what it means for democracy. Coming up next, we'll be looking at topic 2.5, the removal of executives. Thank you once again for watching. Stay curious, review your notes often, and please stay informed. Good luck studying.